25 April 2000. The cafe where they sat was full of other students, reading, talking, smoking, and playing chess. Smoke filled the high red ceilings, and through it, from above it, and hanging down within it, there was music playing. It was soft music, and Ian Cummings liked it. It was easy to think and converse beneath these notes, and Ian wondered if it were Bach that they were hearing. He wondered this quietly to himself, and as he did not look at the woman sitting across from him. He looked down to the wooden table between them. It's the kind of thing that I will try to keep to myself tonight, thought Ian. And then he looked at her, and she was watching him. When the waitress came, the young man asked the girl if she was hungry. "Just a coffee," said the girl, and her head was turned away and towards the server. "Two, please," said Ian, who leaned forward onto the table and also turned his head so that he felt he was beneath the waitress. She was pretty and tired and dressed in black, and she walked away from the table only 2 minutes closer to the end of her night. Don't speak about the waitress, thought Ian. But he could have, and the silence could have been broken between them then. There were so many interesting things to say about the waitress. There was how the night looked to her, and how a room felt different when you worked in it. There was the question of her happiness, and the life that waited for her at the end of the night. But these things we have said before, he thought, and more than once. We can say them again another night. We will say them again, thought Ian. Just try and be good for 1 cup of coffee. He looked at her, and he almost smiled, and she smiled back. "I wonder what we look like," she said. "Another table for 2, said Ian. "No, I was looking at the tables around us and wondering about them, and I wonder what they wonder about us." "What would they say about you?" he asked. "It's interesting to imagine because I know they'd be wrong about how I feel," she said. I could ask her why they would be wrong, thought Ian. Why are they wrong? He thought to ask, but he waited. He was being careful, and he felt it was important to be careful. "What do they say about me?" he asked her. She thought of many things to say, and she looked clearly at him and tilted back her head as if to see through reading glasses. "They would say that this is not our first date, and that we are a couple that doesn't speak the way we used to." "What kinds of things do we speak about now?" Ian Cummings did not look at her, but he did not look at the table down between them. He looked above her to a mirror that hung behind her. Her face blocked his view of both of them, and he noticed only how the smoke from the tables around them nestled against the ceiling and against itself in the mirror's pane. The room seemed quiet, but it was not. There were conversations all around them, and through the smoke, the music played. Maria did not answer him, and Ian Cummings reached into his pocket for a cigarette. He lit it and crossed his legs and smoked it in the silence. "It's wonderful to feel, isn't it?" she asked him. "It is wonderful," said Ian, and he looked at her eyes, which smiled sadly above her silent, almost grinning mouth. She is beautiful, he thought, and on another day he would have told her this again. He would have let himself enjoy the little movements of her head and hands, and he would have spoken them aloud to her. There were movements that he loved in her that she did not intend, and which to Ian seemed like letters sent from far away. They were careless bits of evidence she dropped from where she lived into his space and time. But she lived far from him, and only he knew that she wasn't here. She tilted down her head again to watch the table, and her eyes were low and closed to him. He watched her shoulders lift as she was breathing. He watched her hand move to brush aside a strand of hair. Her hair was short and brown, and she wore black with silver rings and earrings. She never wears gold, thought Ian. She had told him this before, and Ian thought to bring it up again, but he did not. There were 100 things like that which he thought to say that might have made the moment like the others. I can take a little more, he thought. I can still be here with her another moment. And the waitress came and brought the coffee. Thank you, he said. The two young students cupped their hands around their coffee mugs and let their elbows rest upon the wooden table. With the coffee there, he had other things to look at. He could look at his mug, or at hers, and so could she. Outside it was cold, and the dusk had been gray and wet around them as they walked there that night.